It started with the sound of footsteps and shouting outside David's porch again. The neighborhood had grown used to Karen's endless complaints, but this time felt different. As David opened the door, he saw her standing there, blocking the walkway, her arms crossed like she owned the entire block. His visiting nurse, Claire, stood frozen on the steps, holding her medical bag and looking anxious. Karen's voice was sharp and loud, "You can't park here. This is HOA property." Claire tried to explain she was only there for a few minutes, to check David's blood pressure and medications, but Karen wouldn't listen. She waved a clipboard filled with HOA notices, insisting the nurse leave immediately. David's heart pounded. Since his back surgery, Claire's daily visits had been his only lifeline. He'd worked so hard to stay positive, to heal, but every encounter with Karen drained that hope. "I have every right to be here," Claire said softly, refusing to back down, but Karen took out her phone. "Then I'm calling the HOA board, and maybe the police." The tension in the air grew thick. Neighbors peeked through curtains, watching silently. David knew this wasn't just about parking. It was about control, and Karen loved control. But this time, she was crossing a line that would soon destroy her perfect image in ways she never imagined. The next morning, Claire returned, but not alone. She brought paperwork confirming her medical clearance to visit homebound patients. Karen, however, was already waiting, arms folded like a guard at the gate. "You again?" Karen snapped. "I told you, medical or not, you can't just waltz into this community without permission." David watched from his window, gripping his walker tightly. Every word Karen threw was like a slap. Claire stayed calm. "I'm a licensed nurse, and this patient has federal protection under medical access laws. You're not allowed to interfere." Karen smirked. "We'll see about that." Then she did something shocking. She stood directly in front of Claire's car, blocking her from parking. Several neighbors gasped. One recorded it on a phone. David stepped outside despite his pain. "Karen, please. You're stopping someone from helping me." Karen turned, her tone dripping with authority. "Then maybe you shouldn't live here if you need so much help." The words hit like ice. David's chest tightened. But Claire's face hardened. "That's enough. I'm calling my supervisor and documenting this harassment." As Karen stormed off, shouting about rules and appearances, one thing became clear: this wasn't just an argument anymore. It was an official incident. And soon, the law would step in. By afternoon, the neighborhood was buzzing. The video of Karen blocking the nurse spread fast across the HOA chat group. Some supported her, calling her strict but fair, but most were horrified. "She stopped a nurse?" One neighbor texted. "That's illegal, right?" David sat quietly in his living room, reading the messages. He hated the attention, but for once, people were seeing what he'd endured for months. Claire arrived again, carefully parking on the curb. This time, 3 neighbors stood outside watching, protective. Karen appeared moments later, furious at the crowd. "You're all being manipulated," she yelled, but the HOA president, Mr. Collins, stepped forward. "Karen, enough. This community is for everyone. You don't decide who gets medical care." Her face turned red. "You're taking his side?" Collins sighed. "I'm enforcing the law." Karen stormed away, muttering threats under her breath. David watched, his heart pounding, not in fear, but in relief. For the first time, someone had stood up for him, but just when peace seemed possible, Karen filed a formal complaint with the HOA, accusing Claire and David of causing a scene. She didn't realize that complaint would be the very thing to expose her. Days later, David received an official HOA notice. It accused him of creating community disturbance and allowing unauthorized visitors. His hands shook. Claire frowned as she read it. "She's trying to turn this around." But Claire had already reported the incident to her agency, and they'd contacted the county health department. The next morning, 2 investigators arrived to interview David. Karen noticed them and immediately came over. "You can't be here without HOA approval," she barked. The lead investigator flashed a badge. "Ma'am, this is an official public health visit. You're interfering with a state investigation. Karen froze. Investigation? The officer nodded. We've received multiple complaints regarding harassment of a licensed healthcare provider. David looked at Claire, stunned. Things were escalating quickly. Neighbors gathered again, whispering as the investigators documented everything: Karen's words, her previous behavior, even the video footage. That night, Karen's confidence cracked. For the first time, she avoided everyone's eyes. But deep down, David knew this wasn't over. People like her didn't stop, they doubled down, and that's exactly what she did next. Karen showed up at David's house again 2 days later, this time holding papers. I'm appealing to the HOA board. You think you can ruin my reputation? She snapped. Claire was inside checking David's vitals when she heard shouting. Karen, please leave, she said firmly, but Karen refused. You don't belong here. You're not part of this neighborhood. Claire calmly pulled out her phone. Then the police will explain it to you. David's heart raced as Karen tried to snatch the phone, but Claire stepped back. Within minutes, a police cruiser pulled up. Karen started crying, insisting she was protecting the neighborhood. The officer listened carefully, then turned to David. Sir, she can't block your nurse. That's interference with medical care. Karen's eyes widened. What? No. I was just, but the officer was already writing a report. Ma'am, this isn't optional. We'll be forwarding this to the district attorney. The moment felt unreal. David looked at Claire, grateful, emotional, finally free from fear. Yet part of him couldn't shake the thought, how far would Karen go to avoid facing consequences? The following morning, the HOA community woke up to flashing lights. A county sheriff's car stood in front of Karen's house. 2 officers knocked at her door. Inside, Karen's voice trembled. This is ridiculous. I didn't do anything wrong. But the body cam footage told a different story. The officers calmly explained she was being charged with obstruction of medical access and harassment. The same neighbors who once feared her now stood silently watching. David stood on his porch, leaning on his cane, watching the scene unfold. For months, Karen had made him feel powerless. Now, justice was quiet, firm, and fair. Claire placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. You did nothing wrong. David. You just wanted peace. As Karen was escorted to the patrol car, she avoided his eyes. The HOA board quickly issued a statement the same afternoon, apologizing to David and promising policy reform to prevent future harassment. But for David, the greatest relief wasn't the apology, it was the silence that followed. For the first time in months, the neighborhood was calm. Weeks passed. The HOA introduced a new community kindness policy. Karen eventually moved away, unable to face the neighbors she once controlled. David's health improved faster than expected. Claire continued her visits, now greeted warmly by everyone. One afternoon, as they sat on the porch, David smiled faintly. I never thought peace could feel this loud. Claire chuckled. It's not loud, David, it's just life. You got it back. He looked around the trees, the laughter of kids, the smell of fresh cut grass. The nightmare was finally over. Later, David received a letter from the county thanking him for standing up for his rights. His courage had helped change how home visits were handled in HOA communities. And though he never wanted recognition, deep down, he knew something powerful had happened, not revenge, but justice with dignity, and that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you love the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.